let's talk about the commander-in-chief. And I know it hurts to refer to Joe Biden as the commander-in-chief. I realize that hurts. It hurts for a variety of reasons, does it not? It hurts because it's ridiculous that he's the commander-in-chief. It's damaging that he's the commander-in-chief. It's not what you want, it's not what I want, but it's important, I think, every now and then we do refer to him as the commander-in-chief to remind you and me that that is what he is. And whether you like him or not, I certainly don't, whether you like his policies or not, however you feel about him, the President of the United States of America matters a lot. Not just for the country, on the world stage. It matters who the president is. It's extremely important for the nation. Now, the question when it comes to Joe Biden is he going to remain commander-in-chief? Now, look, anyone who's ever watched I'm Right, or if you've watched I'm Right for any length of time, you are well aware of my thoughts on the matter. I think the powers that be are tired of Joe Biden, frustrated with him, and I think this entire thing is a coordinated effort to get Joe Biden to resign. I think they're going to get rid of him. I think he's gone, and in fact, I believe his months are numbered. I believe you can count Joe Biden's time as president in months. No, I don't think he'll actually resign. I think he's going to drop out of the 2024 race. He'll be forced to, but I think he's going to drop out. Now, there are 1,000,001 reasons why Joe Biden is going to drop out, but let's pause for just a moment on something before we go into some of those reasons. He is not going to drop out because of Republicans. Let's just be honest here. Republicans, I refer to them as the low-T GOP for a reason. Republicans lack the spine to force people out. They can't even impeach the guy. Donald Trump was impeached twice over nothing. Republicans still can't come up with, they've got memos, they've got checks. They still can't manage to impeach the guy. So it won't be because of Republicans. It will, however, in part be because of things like this.
Let's see. I'm just following my orders here. Staff, if anybody haven't spoken to, no, I ain't calling on you. I'm calling on, I said I had 5 questions. Anita from VOA. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed. The best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, from Charlotte, another line going from in Florida down to Tampa. Of Putin's kleptocracy, yeah. Los Angeles and what am I doing here?
Okay, so let's get back to what we were talking about. Democrats don't want that guy to be the nominee for obvious reasons. And it's not because they have some deep love of country or something like that. They understand if he's the nominee, it reduces their chances to keep a hold of the Oval Office. That's what they understand. And it's gotten embarrassing to the point where the president of the Dominican Republic now feels comfortable mocking Joe Biden in his frequent vacations to the beach. He mocked him to his face on camera.
Mr. President, we look forward to welcoming you soon to the Dominican Republic at the next Summit of the Americas in 2025. And that summit will be in Punta Cana, so you have time to be on the beach.
Ooh, it sounds small and subtle. It was not. Now, that brings me to why Joe Biden's going to be gone. Okay, Democrats feel that all the mumbles and stumbles are a liability. Stumbles we didn't even mention. The guy can't walk to and fro without falling down. It's obviously a problem for them. And they're already to bounce him. Because maybe right now you're saying, yeah, Jesse, but they're not going to bounce him. They're going to keep him. Jesse, you're crazy. Okay. Well, in about a 24-hour time span, we saw the New York Times, the biggest communist rag really anywhere in the planet. Communist countries don't have a communist publication as communist as the New York Times. And the New York Times gleefully ran headlines talking about how Donald Trump was curb stomping Joe Biden in the polls. Why in the world would the New York Times run an article so nastily critical of the President of the United States of America? Well, they're doing it for the exact same reason that Democrat stalwart David Axelrod came out and said it's time for Democrats to move on from Joe Biden. If you paid any attention when that news dropped about the polls and Joe Biden's polls and Donald Trump, you saw one specific thing. You see right there from the Daily Mail. Daily Mail, as you see, New York Times, CNN, ABC, CBS, David Axelrod. It was all across the mouthpieces of the system, virtually all of them in unison at one time. Within a 24-hour span, they all got up and said, well, I mean, the polls are bad. Polls look bad. Some of them, like Axelrod, flat out came out and said, well, I mean, we kind of need a new guy. Again, it's not Republicans. The evil system in which we live has decided that Joe Biden is a liability. And for them, it's not just that Joe Biden is so ugly as a candidate. I'm not talking about his physical appearance, whatever, I don't care about that. As a candidate, for them, it's not just that Joe Biden is so ugly. That in and of itself would be a problem. It's that the other guy looks so good. Now, again, I'm not talking about physical, but Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom. Democrats have this fully formed communist robot as governor of California. He looks the part. He talks the part. He is a full-blown communist, and that's what Democrats believe in now. He sounds smooth. He's taking these vacations over there to China. And not only that, he's saying all the right things when he's sitting down in all these interviews, which he's clearly giving the interview because he's trying to increase his national brand and get ready to run for president. There's no point for the governor of California to give these interviews, but when he sits down to do these interviews, he even does the, hey man, I'm a team guy, I'm not worthy kind of thing.
You know how your polling goes.
Yeah.
You check every box that the current president doesn't for the people who are worried about him.
I have deep respect, reverence for Joe Biden as a person, his character, his decency, and his capacity to do great things. That's why I'm not worthy of that conversation. This guy deserves it. And we, as members of the party, deserve to have his back.
You want to know why that's so brilliant? And it's part of the reason Democrats are so enamored by the other girl, the other woman, that would be Gavin Newsom. You know why? Because if you're going to push out the sitting president, as they very clearly are, if you're going to push out the sitting president, there's a risk that comes with that. He's obviously not going to be pleased about that conversation. Jill, who's really running things, she's not going to be pleased either. Hey, you don't have to go home, Joe, but you can't stay here. That's not an easy conversation to have. Well, what you can't afford to do if you're the Democrats, if you're Gavin Newsom, you can't afford to pour extra gasoline on that angry fire as he's on the way out the door. Yes, he's going to be angry and bitter about being pushed out. You don't have to rub it in his face. So the new guy, the other guy, what does he need to do? He needs to act like he was on Team Joe. And when they get done pushing Joe on out the door to go mumble his way back into Delaware with all his illicit funds he's taken in from China, Gavin Newsom will take the microphone and sing Joe Biden's praises about what a wonderful president he was. And you know what's going to give them all the ability to do this? You've heard me predict this before, but I figure we've got a bunch of new viewers. In fact, we know we do, so I might as well lay this out there. Joe Biden, when he announces he's not going to run again, please write this down, Mr. Producer. Joe Biden's going to claim it's for health reasons. I guarantee it. He's not going to get up to the microphone and say, my polling sucks. I can't get through a sentence. He's going to get up and say, I've got a bad cold, guys. Anyway, I know you want me to run again, and I want to run again. But for the good of the nation and my health, I'm going to hand it over to Gavin and his hair gel. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. We'll talk to my boy John Phillips about this. He knows Newsom better than most. Next.
And I think we need to move past this notion that he's not going to run. President Biden is going to run, and looking forward to getting him reelected. I think there's been so much wallowing in the last few months and hand-wringing in this respect, but we're gearing up for the campaign. We're looking forward to it.
But you hear these calls privately. What do you tell these donors who are wallowing in this?
Time to move on. Let's go.
And am I supposed to interpret that comment about the vice president, that if for some reason the president chose not to run at this point,
well, that's
everybody rallies around her?
It's the Biden-Harris administration. Maybe I'm a
You
little
respect
old-fashioned.
that. Yeah,
Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned about presidents and vice presidents. I was a lieutenant governor, so I'm a little subjective.
Those comments are going to be so fun to play on a loop over and over and over and over again as soon as Democrats run Joe Biden out of the White House and Gavin Newsom's the nominee. Joining me now, my friend John Phillips of the great John Phillips Show. Okay, John, all politicians, Republicans, Democrats, they all do the exact same thing. As you know, you probably are more politically astute than anyone I know. They all do the, no, I'm not going to run. No, I can't. No, I really couldn't. About 5 minutes before they walk up to the stage and say, I wasn't gonna, but everybody wanted me to, so now I am. And that's all I see here. But am I just seeing what I want to see?
You're 100% right. And I don't know why they do that, because politicians are inherently ambitious. They want to accumulate power. They want to move from office to office. And yet, for some reason, they all act like this damsel in distress whenever they're asked if there's an office that they'd like to run for in the future. And it's so obvious that Gavin Newsom is running for president that even John Fetterman at a recent event came out and said, well, there's two Democrats running against Joe Biden right now. Dean Phillips, the congressman from Minnesota, and Gavin Newsom, the governor from California. If a man with brain damage can figure out that this guy's running for president, doesn't he realize it's obvious to everyone else too?
John, we talk a lot, and you and I have had this conversation before, but I want to make sure everyone's kind of up to speed on what it means to run a presidential campaign. And, it's not just walking up to the microphone and then putting out a TikTok video. It takes quite an organization to run for president. And Gavin Newsom is one of the only Democrats in the country outside of Joe Biden who has put together an organization to run for president. But what does that mean to the normal person who doesn't understand what we're talking about here?
Well, it requires a bunch of things, including things like lists of supporters, lists of donors, those sorts of things. It's something that is a hot commodity in politics. And then you can use this list to hit people up for money or endorsements or to share things on social media, or you can take this list and you can sell it to other people and make lots of money by doing that. And one of the things that Gavin Newsom did recently is he came up with this constitutional amendment related to gun control that has no chance at all of passing. But because he was out there promoting it on all of the national channels and getting people to sign up to support his gun control initiative, he's building this database of supporters or potential supporters that he could then call on if and when he decides to run. But he's not doing it as, I'm the candidate, sign up to support me as the candidate. Oh, no, I'm just the governor of California that wants to do something about gun control. And that's how he's getting it. So he's getting this list through surreptitious means.
He is, and I hope everyone hears what John just said. The reason you open up your phone in the morning and you have some email from some campaign or political action PAC that you've never corresponded with, it's because you gave your email to someone else who sold your email in list form to that political action PAC. Your email is money, isn't it, John?
Yeah, and if you ever want to play a trick to find out who's doing it, use a different name every time you sign up every time you subscribe to a newspaper or a magazine or whatever the case may be. And when you get some ad in the mail with that name, you know who sold that list and who sold your name.
Well, I remember like it was yesterday when they hit me up for my congressional list after I was done losing 2 campaigns. All right, John, now, Gavin Newsom, as far as his general election electability, and I'm sure that's not the way you're supposed to put that, but I'm an idiot, so that's how I put it. I obviously don't need any help hating Gavin Newsom. I'm sure you don't either. But I'm not normal. I'm on the right, far to the right. The normal voter, is this guy, does he come off as slimy and sleazy like he does to me? Does he come off as smooth? How does this guy come off to Joe Schmo?
He is more likable than you or I would probably like to admit. He's one of these people who surrounds himself with Republicans. He lives, even though he lives in a blue state, he lives in a very Republican area. His neighbors are all Republicans. His wife's family, they live in Montana. They're very wealthy people in Montana who donate to Ron DeSantis. A lot of the extended members of his own family are Republican. He watches nothing but Fox News and probably your show at night after he pours a couple of glasses of wine. So he understands, as a liberal Democrat, how Republicans think better than a lot of Republican elected officials do, because he consumes nothing but our media and talks to nothing but other Republicans. So he's a chameleon in many ways and has the ability to branch out past the normal Democratic base. And I don't think people give him enough credit for that. That being said, it's entirely possible that he's another one of these paper tigers. And you see this happen over and over again throughout history, where you have these governors who, for whatever reason, are white hot in their own state, and the national publications write about them as the savior of their party. And then it comes around to where they actually put their name on the ballot, or they have to put their name on the ballot, and then it just blows up on takeoff. You saw that with Mario Cuomo when he was the governor of New York. Everyone thought that he was going to be the next big thing. That didn't exactly happen. You saw that with Beto O'Rourke from your state of Texas and others. And I think there's a chance that could be Gavin Newsom, too, that he could be just, the it girl that just can't sell movie tickets.
Okay, let's drill down on that, because actually another example from my state is Rick Perry, wildly popular governor from the state of Texas, good-looking guy, charismatic, of course going to be the next big thing. And it's hard to find more embarrassing presidential campaigns than Rick Perry's presidential campaigns. So my question is, just trying to game plan this out for Newsom, why doesn't it work for these governors when it doesn't work? What is the thing they're missing nationally that they have in their state?
Well, there's only 24 hours in a day. So if you're Gavin Newsom and you are going to New York City to do the national shows, or you're traveling to Israel, or you're traveling to China to make yourself look like a world leader, who's minding the store back at home? And in a state as large and complex as California, it was complete chaos while he was gone. He was in China, and there was a district attorney, George Gascon, in Los Angeles that he initially appointed to be the DA of San Francisco, who is to the left of Japan. I mean, this guy absolutely is a Soros prosecutor who does not believe in putting any criminal in prison. He believes that victims need to check their privilege, and he reinforces that over and over and over again. There was an attractive woman in a skirt in downtown Long Beach walking, and a homeless man who was totally naked came up from behind her, lifted her skirt up, and pressed himself up against her and knocked her down. An obvious sexual assault. Cops turn it over to the DA. The DA, they recommend felony sexual assault charges. The DA, the Soros DA, gets the case and says, no, this is a misdemeanor. And one of the charges that he's charging the guy with is vandalism. They're literally treating her lady parts like it's a vending machine that got robbed. And that was the only story that got covered in California while he was gone. So he's thinking he's looking like a world leader. And then this is the story that's dominating the headlines while you're not here. You don't do anything about it. You don't say anything about it. And it's getting everyone all worked up. And you look awful. And there was a poll that just came out here in California this morning that had his approval rating at 49%, which is low for him. And that's not 49% as an accident. He's neglecting everything going on in the state right now. So people who voted for him are frustrated with the fact that he's on this tour around the globe trying to present himself as an alternative to Joe Biden.
Okay, finally, and I know this is nerd stuff, but I think people love the details and they love information you provide. How's his fundraising? And I say that, I want to preface this by saying, I understand he's governor of California, so he's raised a ton of money. That's what it takes to be governor of a state like California. It's not Wyoming, where you can run for governor on $10 million. California is different. But is he a prolific fundraiser? You know, in Texas, we have Greg Abbott here, who's a prolific fundraiser, and everyone thought that was going to make him a great candidate for president.
Yeah, he's very good at fundraising, but it's different here. He's the only game in town. And California is different than every other state in the union just because of our size. I mean, we're like the size of the United Kingdom or France. So if you have a public employee retirement system, let's say, how you shift your money around the stock market matters to the entire global economy. Anytime the state of California buys something, that is a contract that involves eye-popping numbers. So if you're a corporation or you're a union or you are whoever, some moneyed interest that needs something in the state, you have to go through him. And if you want to get the good table at the restaurant, you better pay off the doorman. You better pay off the maitre d'. And, you know, he's the guy at the French Laundry standing there with his hand out, and he collects.
Yeah, he sure does. John, thank you, my man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, we have the former spokesperson for the California GOP, Jennifer Kerns, joins us. Hang on.
Right now, there are two additional Democrats running for president right now. One is a congressman from Minnesota. The other one is the governor of California. They're both running for president, but only one had the guts to announce it.
Ouch. Senator Cucumber just with a shot across the bow right there. Joining me now, Jennifer Kerns, former spokesperson, California GOP, also author of the book, The Real War on Women. Jennifer, okay, I thought Gavin Newsom was the golden boy around here, and we got the senator from the great state of Pennsylvania taking pot shots at him. What do we make of all this?
Well, I think the cucumber might be a little bit jealous that you're right. Gavin Newsom is the golden boy. He's been the golden boy of the California Democrats for the last 30 years. He's also the golden boy for, I think, the DNC. I think there is most certainly a parallel plan here to perhaps at some point get rid of Joe Biden. We see, Donald Trump beating him in 5 key battleground states. You already see Democrats such as David Axelrod hitting the panic button. I think that certainly gives an open door to Gavin Newsom to waltz right in. And I think also there's a chance that Kamala Harris gets tossed off of the VP ticket. Don't forget, Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris have been competing for the same job for the last 35 years, going back to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and the mayor's office in San Francisco. So as someone who's been playing in the California politics pond for the last 20 years, this is going to be pretty exciting. This is like the Young and the Restless. I'm popping the popcorn over here. This is going to be a pretty big clash, in my opinion.
Yes, there's nothing finer than some Democrat on Democrat violence. Jennifer, people who are not familiar with California politics and the power structure out there, where do most of the powers that be lie in that battle between Newsom and Dome? I realize she's vice president, he's the governor. It's where do the powers that be line up?
Well, it's interesting. They've been going back, they're kind of neck and neck. They've both been sort of vying for the same jobs. They're sort of in the same position that they were 20 years ago when Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco and she was his district attorney. So they've sort of been dancing around one another for a long time. But I think in 2024, we could see that finally come to a head. Here's what's interesting. Biden, I have this theory, and I think it's proven to be true, that Biden put Kamala Harris on the ticket really to kind of shut her up and make sure she wasn't a thorn in his side in the 2020 campaign. Remember, there's very bad blood between the Biden and Obama camp going back to 2008 when they tried to enforce the Secure Communities Act. That was basically, when Barack Obama and the Democrats actually admitted that there was a problem at the southern border. They wanted to set up information sharing capabilities between local law enforcement and state and ICE. And they said, basically, if you get pulled over on a traffic stop in the state of California, ICE can deport you. You have to prove that you're a citizen or ICE can deport you. Well, there was somebody who was Attorney General of the state of California who said, no, we're not going to do that. And in fact, she issued a memo to the 58 county district attorneys in California and said, ignore the Obama-Biden edict. We're not doing that in the state of California. And that basically ended the whole Obama program. And, Obama, Valerie Jarrett, all those folks have very long memories. They don't like Kamala Harris. And I think that's why they put her in charge of the border crisis and made her the border czar, knowing that that would be a great failure for her. And it's interesting, Jesse, the LA Times just did a poll on Kamala Harris's approval rating, showing exactly when it started to go down. And that was exactly when she was named the border czar. She's only at about 36% approval rating. And in fact, the more important number is she has a 55% disapproval rating. So that means she has about the same unfavorability rating, even higher than Hillary Clinton.
Oh, gosh. Okay, Jennifer, explain this to me then. How has she risen so far in politics? It's not just that she's vice president now. This woman was, as you mentioned, AG of California. That's a big friggin' deal. She was a United States Senator from California. That's a big deal. This woman who nobody likes, and she has the personality of a can of paste, and yet she continues to rise in politics. How does this happen?
Well, initially, don't forget, Willie Brown, who was the former mayor of San Francisco, talk about a golden guy. They dated. He wrote about it in the San Francisco Chronicle that he and Kamala Harris had dated. He got her first 2 or 3 jobs on a public commission in San Francisco. And from there, she was pretty well protected for the next 20 years. But you see, right, the vapid qualities that she has. It's hard to believe she has risen to the position she has been. And that is part of the result of being in a one-party state where they aren't really challenged that much as they rise through the ranks. And really, she did enjoy that protection of Willie Brown for so many years.
Let's talk about Gavin Newsom for a second. I am worried about Gavin Newsom being the nominee, and I'm worried about his appeal to women. You know what? Here he is in an interview.
Women are smarter in politics, smarter in civics. They're smarter in economics. Women rule.
Okay, we'll set aside the ham-fisted, outreach towards women. That's very cringeworthy. I find that stuff to be absurd, but I'm looking at the numbers, Jennifer, and women love to vote Democrat. Do they love Gavin Newsom?
Well, look, the women in California certainly do love Gavin Newsom, but the demographics in, say, the state of California are much different than the state of Ohio, the state of Oklahoma, the state of Texas, and some of those states he would have to win. The reason Gavin Newsom is so popular among female voters, the number one voting bloc in the state of California is now the single female professional working woman. And so that's how Gavin Newsom is able to have so much power. But look, we saw, in the elections this week, the state of Ohio, other states where the abortion issue is so important. So, Gavin Newsom is going to ride that all the way to the polls for his advantage. The GOP really needs to get with it in coming up with some alternate messaging here. There are a lot of other issues that women care about on a daily basis that impact their lives more on a daily basis. Those are issues like the economy, which Gallup poll now says is the number one issue for women at the polls. GOP needs to start talking about these issues. That's why I wrote my book, The Real War on Women, because there are 14 other ways that the Democrats are waging war on women, from the Green New Deal to the economy to the lockdowns, and you name it. We really need to get with it on the messaging side.
No, we do. Jennifer, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. The great Buck Sexton. Heard of him, right? He's going to join us next.
The New York Times poll has President Biden trailing future incarcerated Donald Trump in 5 key battleground states. And with the election less than a year away, some Democrats are suggesting that maybe Graham POTUS should let someone else top the ticket in 24. The calls for Joe Biden to drop out are getting louder, but that could just be because he can't hear them.
They are getting louder. And you know what excites me the most about this? Because you're hearing this everywhere. Joe Biden's too old, Joe Biden's too old, Joe Biden's too old. What excites me most about the prospect of Joe Biden dropping out is that I will get to text message Buck and tell him I was right and you were wrong. And that, for me, is the most important thing I treasure more than anything else in the world. Joining me now, somebody that you're going to be well familiar with, Buck Sexton, of course, of the gigantic Clay and Buck Show. Buck, I hope you're ready because I'm just going to be obnoxious that day. Just block my number that day. The day Joe Biden announces he's resigning for health reasons or something like that, or not running again, man, just block me, buddy.
So just, I'm breathing more easily now because I thought when you did this, you were going to make fun of my massive head, which the audience does on any video stream I do on a regular basis. I was born with this head. I can't change my giant cranium that truly requires special order hats and helmets for me to play different sports. Okay, so I also I'm sad because usually, Jesse, I get to sit here and I mean, I don't even know if it makes for the best TV, but I agree with you on so many things. I don't want to say like 95% of things, and it just turns into a high five session. How can you be so wrong on this, man? Of course, Joe Biden is going to go the distance. Like, I don't know what else to say here. Just to be clear, you, Tucker, Clay, O'Reilly, all of you think that I'm crazy. All right. So you guys are all on one side of this issue. So I'm excited because I'm going to be sending out a group text to all of you telling you. Let me explain why this is going to be Joe Biden, even though everything that you're going to tell me about Joe Biden, right? Like, this is what I have to. I've gone through this. I've gone through this with Uncle Bill. I've gone through this with Clay. Everything you're going to tell me, I know and is true, right? He looks confused. He falls down. All those things are true. But Clay, Jesse, they were basically true 4 years ago. Like, it doesn't really matter. They don't care. The system, the apparatus runs the presidency now. There was just an article about how Obama was advising on AI behind the scenes, all of his special advisors helping. Joe Biden's a figurehead, my man, and he's a name everybody recognizes, and that's just the way it's going to go. He's the incumbent.
Okay, now let me push back on this because everything you just said there is true almost. There's one thing that is not true. The system, if you will, does not want him anymore. We have articles, front page articles in the New York Times, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, across the board. Jimmy freaking Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel is as big of a card-carrying commie apparatchik as we have in this country. He's making fun of him. This time, instead of the system holding up President Poopy Pants, this time it seems like they want him gone. I don't think he's going to be gone because he's older because Republicans don't like him. I think he's going to be gone because the system doesn't like him.
So let me take you to another level, because first of all, again, what you're saying is true. There are all these articles and there's all this last minute fear that somehow people are going to start not being crazy and recognize that putting somebody who is not just past his prime, but is obviously in senility and a dementia phase is deeply irresponsible, really, whatever your politics are, because there are situations in which the commander in chief does have to make decisions, or at least should be able to listen to different advisors and figure. Okay, so that's all true. The other reason why I'm so confident in my analysis, and I know you're going to play this clip back and mock me mercilessly if and when it turns into Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama, and so I'm leaning into this right now, knowing that I'm going to get absolutely crushed in about 6 months if that happens. But the other part of this is there's no easy way to replace him. So, like, we could dive into this for a second. There's nothing you can do. Now, Kamala Harris taking over, and I've said this all along, that to me is still, that's like a Biden ticket. That doesn't, that to me is why you have a vice president. And I've always said he's old enough where, yeah, he could have like a stroke or a heart attack. I mean, something could happen. That's why we have a vice president. So Kamala Harris, I don't consider that me being wrong. That's not her replacing him. That's her just being the vice president and taking over.
No.
That's their only number two option, Jesse. The other stuff people are talking about, you can't even get on the ballot in a lot of these states unless you are the candidate or you've declared as a candidate by the middle of December. So how are you going to have a Democrat who's not even on the ballot, or how are you going to have Gavin Newsom or Pritzker or who's the evil witch of Michigan? What's her name? Whitmer.
Oh, Whitmer.
How are you going to have one of them on the ballot when they can't even get it done in time? You know what I'm saying? Like the logistics becomes the issue. The logistics becomes the reason why Gavin Newsom. Who's going to vote for Gavin Newsom in Pennsylvania? Get out of here.
Okay, well, let's finish up with this one then. Let's talk about Dome for a minute. They have to know that Joe Biden, it's not that I'm rooting for this, probably cannot live through another 4-year term when your mind is melting quite that quickly. Now, it's not that Kamala Harris is unfamiliar with being the backup plan. That's how she began her political career. But Democrats know she's unpopular. They don't want her there.
Oh, I think that the whole plan here is that you'll have Joe Biden make it, and I've said this for now years, if they have to literally wheel him, the proper use of the term literally, Jesse, if they have to actually wheel him, yeah, I know, across the finish line in terms of this election, if they have to put him in a wheelchair, if they have to carry him on a, whatever, it doesn't matter. They'll do that. Kamala takes over in the second term. And that's what's baked into all of this. No one thinks Joe Biden's going to be president for 4 more years. It's just, does the Biden-Harris brand, does that ticket, is it enough to defeat Donald Trump, 4 times indicted, the civil case, all this other stuff, all the Jan 6 nonsense they're going to be screaming about? And I'll say one part of this, the reason you're seeing the panic is the plan for the apparatus was the indictments will destroy Trump. And right now we're looking at this. I mean, I just, as you and I are talking, I just spoke to Trump recently, sat down with him Mar-a-Lago. Trump is crushing Biden. That's the part, that's where the panic, it's not that Biden sucks and they realize he's so old. It's, hold on a second, our plan isn't working right now, which is we just put old man Biden out, right? And have all these Trump indictments and it won't matter and he'll win. They're worried that won't work. So it's not really about Biden so much as the indictments backfiring. I think that's where a lot of the anxieties come. I mean, they feed into each other, but that's what the trigger for the anxiety has been on the left.
All right. You know what? We're going to find out, Buck. I'm blocking you if you turn out to be right. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Wait, I want to stay.
See, we just cut Buck off. Sorry. That was done on purpose. All right. We have final thoughts. Next. I don't think he makes it. And maybe I'm just being stubborn. Maybe it's even wishful thinking. But someone's going to have to explain to me how Joe Biden even has the energy to make it all the way to 2024. And I know maybe you're yelling right now that he's just going to run a basement campaign like he did last time. We do forget about the basement campaign, don't we? Remember they got busted? Remember he was doing an interview and he got busted because someone didn't cover up the reflection? Someone was standing behind him with cue cards. He was reading cue cards on his presidential campaign from his basement. But, man, eventually Father Time is undefeated. You see the guy. You hear the guy. He always sounds, I don't know. Anyway, I don't think he's going to make it. I think he's going to announce that he is not running again. I think this Hunter Biden stuff is going to wear his old butt out anyway. And I say it's going to be, Gavin Newsom. And that's worse, I should note. It'd be much easier to defeat Joe Biden than Gavin Newsom. But it is what it is, and I guess we'll see if I'm wrong, all right? All right.